But it's not just customers' experience and it's not just revenue, it's reputational risk.
I'm John Generone, editor-in-chief of IPO Edge. Very happy to be back here at NASDAQ Market Site on this hot Monday morning in New York City. I've got with me Paul Appleby, who's the president and CEO of Virtana. He flew 30 hours in from Australia just to join us. Just kidding, he lives here. Anyway, Paul, thanks for joining.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
You did just fly in from Australia, though.
I did indeed. I've been on a global tour, in fact, and Australia was the last stop. So, but happy to be back in New York.
That's great. So the discussion topic of the day is observability. Can you tell viewers who are not familiar with that what it's all about?
Yeah, if you think about it today, every company is a tech company. I don't care if you're a bank, you're a healthcare company, you're a telco, your business revolves around the technology. You know, whether we're talking about internet banking, whether we're talking about trading platforms or whatever else, those things are critical to the business. Yeah. Observability is really a class of software that monitors and supports that infrastructure to make sure those services stay available. That's really what observability is about. It's different from just monitoring. Observability implies action. So you're observing and taking action to make sure those services are available.
Gotcha. Now, in a complex business model, or maybe even a simple business model, observability is not always easy to come by, right? What are some of the challenges of attaining it?
No, it's really complex. If you think, let's stick with the banking analogy.
Yeah.
You know, hugely complex environments. You know, we like to talk a lot about hybrid infrastructure. Some of our infrastructure is in the cloud, some of it's on premise, some of it's running on really old infrastructure across complex networks. The real challenge is if you're running a service like internet banking, for example, there's huge complexity in the infrastructure that supports that. So to really make sure that that service stays available, you've got to be able to look at every level of that stack, every level of that infrastructure, and be able to, you know, really identify where problems are occurring.
Gotcha. Does cybersecurity tie into this in some way?
It does a little. You know, if you think about business resilience, if you think about business risk, there's the risk that's caused by technology disruption, whether it's tech or human error, and there's disruption caused by cyber threat and cyber attacks. So they kind of exist on the same plane, if you like.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about hybrid work? How does that impact observability? You've got people who formerly were all sitting next to each other, shared information, you know, like we are right now. But now you've got to be able to let your your staff communicate around the world 24/7. It sounds like it could be problematic.
Yeah, you know what I'd say, John, is there's a lot of mega trends that are actually impacting infrastructure and observability. Hybrid work's one of them. You know, the exposure of our business services and the way that we're doing it on mobile devices and through IoT devices, you know, as we connect up devices to our networks and infrastructure, hybrid work's a great example. So how do we ensure that our employees can continue to work, continue to do the great work that they do for our customers, you know, whether you're a bank or a telco or a healthcare company, but do that in a way where the data is safe and secure and where the services are not disrupted. And that's, you know, that's one of the great complexities of this space. And one of the reasons why this huge market, the observability market, supports many very large public companies that are listed here in New York, as you know, but it's a market that's growing at around 20% per annum and is seen to, as expected to grow for around 20% per annum for the foreseeable future.
Gotcha. Now, we're talking a little bit now about employees, but tell us how you help communication or facilitate communication between a variety of stakeholders, because there are plenty of them, right?
Well, if you think about it, you know, the world of IT being the realm of IT has changed forever. If every company is a tech company, every CEO, every senior executive, the head of the retail bank, you know, the head of a major retail organization, tech matters because my business revolves around that technology, my customers' experience, but it's not just customers' experience and it's not just revenue, it's reputational risk. And if you're in a regulated business like healthcare or financial services, for example, it's regulatory exposure as well. So to be able to really think about observability in that truly business resilient way, you need to be able to present that to all stakeholders, not just the IT stakeholders, but the business stakeholders as well. And that's really what modern observability is all about. It's about making sure your business continues to run, operate, and does that in a very efficient way.
Makes sense. A lot of our viewers might be familiar with some of the publicly traded companies that are, I think, in this space, so say Datadog, Dynatrace.
Yep.
How are you different from those guys?
You know, what I'd say is that there's been a promise with observability for many years where one platform will be able to manage all of that complexity.
Yeah.
The cloud, you know, hybrid and remote work, IoT, AI workloads. But the reality is, you know, a number of those companies, you mentioned a few of them, they've failed to fulfill that promise. They're very good in one or two areas, but they lack the breadth and depth. And that's really where Virtana is different. We've been building this platform and building on this platform for the last 15 years with a view to managing complex hybrid scale. And to do that, you need to not only have breadth to be able to cover all of that complexity, but real depth. And if you think about it, it's more like the difference between an X-ray and an MRI. You know, if you've got that kind of depth of telemetry that you're getting, you can get to root cause faster. So if there's an outage or a service disruption, you know, the thing that our industry loves to talk about is mean time to resolution. Internet banking's out, how long does it take to fix? So to get there, you've got to get to causality first. What caused that? And then how can I remedy that? And we deliver that 95% faster than those players that you mentioned.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I think you've just gotten a little bit better at that thanks to this recent acquisition. Can you tell our viewers about that? And by the way, is that part of why you were on this world tour just now? Were you telling various stakeholders about it?
Absolutely, I've been out there. You know, we talk about stakeholder management. I'm a big fan of communicating. And that's not only with our own teams, but with our customers. So I've been on a global tour. I was in Europe, then I was in India. Back here in the US for a number of customer meetings in Singapore and then Australia. And it was really about not only engaging with stakeholders, but listening as well. Because the key thing for us is we've got to be listening to what's going on in the markets. We've got to hear what's going on. Where is AI headed? Where is infrastructure headed? So that we can get there ahead of our customers. And that's really what that trip was all about. And making sure that we're listening and making sure that the roadmaps that we're developing, both in terms of our development and engineering efforts, but also in terms of M&A activity. So we just acquired a company called Xenos, fantastic company, highly regarded by Gartner for their event intelligence, which is really about using the power of AI within these platforms to help automate a lot of these processes. So we are super excited, not only about their technology, but their customer base. Fortune 500 companies, Global 2000 companies that rely on their technology. So it really expanded our capability to deliver that true hybrid observability platform.
Great. Now, sticking with AI, Paul, can you just explain in a little bit more detail some of the challenges that come with this use of AI for infrastructure monitoring?
Yeah, I think there's two elements there, John. It's really important to understand the difference between the two. On the one side, because of the scale and complexity of infrastructure in a big bank or a big telco, for example, using the power of AI to help identify root cause and then to automate remediation, super powerful. So this is an area called AI Ops, where we're leveraging AI within the observability platform to manage that complexity at scale and drive operational efficiency. The other side is what I mentioned earlier, is that companies are going from experimenting with AI. Pretty much every major company on the planet has been looking at AI. How can AI play a role in my retail business? How can AI play a role in my financial services business? And it's been through this kind of experimentation phase over the last couple of years. But you've heard Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, and Michael Dell both speak very publicly recently about the advent of the AI factory. It's about the industrialization of AI and AI at scale, and they're seeing this incredible explosion of growth year on year. It's really been quite amazing, this shift over the last 12 months. But there's a challenge that comes with that. because the infrastructure for AI is very different from traditional infrastructure.
Yeah.
And what we were able to do, working with our customers, working with NVIDIA and Dell and others, we saw that coming. So we've built the world's first and only full stack AI observability platform for the AI factory, and that was released just a couple of weeks ago.
All right, great. Now, is that, when we're talking about that, is that the same as AIFO?
Yes.
It is, okay,
Yep.
So same thing.
So it's the AI factory observability. So we're taking that AI factory construct and bringing this kind of idea of resilience and efficiency to, large scale AI.
Makes a lot of sense. If I can ask you, this is a little bit outside of your field, but I was in San Francisco at the RSAC conference, cybersecurity companies. We did upwards of 25 interviews. I think every single person we interviewed talked about AI.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear that, I mean, I know it's important, but are some people handling it better than others? I mean, because there's a risk when you've got a buzzword out there that companies say, oh, we're going into AI, and so I see small cap companies do this kind of thing sometimes, and it worries me. Are they actually bringing anything to the table?
We are in the hype cycle, and we saw that. I mean, we've seen plenty of these hype cycles over the years, John. And there are the companies that really deliver value and create lasting impact, and then there are people that kind of try and jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
I think it's really about looking at how they're executing, whether they're executing at scale, who their customers are, what business impact they're having, because ultimately, tech world's full of buzzwords.
Yeah.
I like to try and turn the tech world into business problems that we're solving. What business problem am I solving? Does it matter? Will it scale? Am I differentiated in solving that problem? And that's really what we need to look for. And if you talk about cybersecurity, and that is a huge topic in and of itself, AI is going to play a massive role there. Because again, we're talking about massive scale, massive complexity, leveraging the power of AI to identify threats earlier. Potentially stop those threats from penetrating, or if they do, recommend course for remediation, absolutely key. So there's a lot of really interesting companies to watch there, but the ones I'm most focused on are the ones that are really in the world of applied AI, where they're taking AI and solving a very specific business problem with it, and that's really where you're going to see scale.
Great. All right, last question, Paul. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
All right.
For investors out there learning about this really interesting company, which of course is still private, might there be a day in the future where regular investors can buy shares and you're listed right here at NASDAQ?
One would, you never say never. What I'd say is we're in this incredible growth phase. We just made an amazing acquisition. We continue to look at other opportunities for organic and inorganic growth. And as companies grow and scale, opportunities present themselves. So, perhaps one day.
All right, good answer, Paul. Well, it's been a real treat to have you here, and thanks for coming in after that terribly long flight from down under. This has been Paul Appleby, who's the president and CEO of Virtana. I'm John Janarone, signing off from NASDAQ MarketSite.